right, good morning. So we'll start with Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga. From the heart of the savior of the 100 deities of the Shita on a peak of cloud resembling a clump of extremely white fresh curd, King of Dharma omniscient Losan Drakpa, please come here together with your sons. In the sky before me, and lion throne, lotus and moon, my perfect pure Guru smiles with delight. Supreme field of merit from a mind of faith, please abide for 100 eons to spread the teachings. Your holy mind is the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech, which is excellent explanation, is an ear ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renowned. To you are meaningful to see, hear, and remember are prostrate. Pleasing drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incenses, light-scented waters, and so forth. Oceans of cloud-like offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I offer to you the supreme field of merit. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three vows that I've collected from beginningless time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. You strove for much learning and practice in this degenerate age and made your freedoms and richnesses meaningful by abandoning the eight worldly concerns. Sever, we sincerely rejoice in your extensive deeds. Perfect pure holy gurus from the billion clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dhammakaya. Please let follow rain of profound and extensive Dhamma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued exactly as they need. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and long transmigratory beings, and in particular may it cause the essence of perfect pure Losan Drakpa's teachings to shine forever. Sa shi apoki ju shi me to Ram Ri Ram Ling Shi Ni De Gem Pari Sangye Shindu Mikte Owa Gidroku Namda Shin La Chu Pasho. By the merits of having offered this mandala to Lama Tsongkhapa and his two sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Lawson Drapa, with the morality of an eminently pure way of life, where it was courageous and extensive conduct of the sons of the victorious one, and accomplish the yoga of two stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Nidang Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami. By the force of having fervently requested in this way, hollow beams of white light are emitted from the hearts of the perfect pure Father and Sons, and combining into one enter my crown. White nectar, the color of milk, flows from the opening of teal of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and the imprints without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. So we're going to do the 5-line mixing up prayer in page 13. I'm going to do it 3 times. Mimetse wete chen chen rezi, jime kembe wambo wakbe yan, dubu malu jomze saweda, kanche kebe tungen tsonga pa, losan jampe shabla sawade. Mimetse wete chen chen rezi, jime kembe wambo jampe yan, dubu malu jomze saweda, kanche kebe tungen tsonga pa, losan jampe shabla sawade. Mimetse wete chen chen rezi, jime kembe wambo jampe yan, dubu malu jomze saweda, kanche kebe tungen tsonga pa, losan jampe shabla Sawade
Sangye
Chondan
Chodam
Togi
Togi
Chonam
Jonam
La
La
Chanchu
Chanchu
Badu
Badu
Dandi
Dandi
Kyam
Kyam
Suchi
Suchi
Dagi
Dagi
Chisongi
Chisi
Besonangi Drola
Drolam
Penche
Penche
Sangye
Sangye
Dubansho.
Dubansho Sanji
Sonan
Chodan
Tsogi
Tsoki
Chonam
Chonam
La
La
Chancho
Chancho
Badu
Badu
Dani
Dani
Kyasu
Kyasuji
Ji Dagi
Dagi
Juzo
Chuji
Gibe
Betson
Tsonangi Drola
Cholam Benji
Penchi
Sanji
Sange Drupa
Drupala
Sho
Sho Sanji
Sonan
Chodan
Tsogi
Tsoki
Chonam
Chonam
La
La
Chancho
Chancho
Badu
Badu
Dani
Dani
Kyasu
Kyasu
Ji
Dagi
Dagi
Chuji
Chuji Gibe
Banda
Tsonangi
Dagi Drola
Drola Penchi
Sanji
Sange Drupa
Drupala
Sho.
Sho 강기 투즈니 존에 따와 통제 방비체를 당비춘 된지 과담 켈라 창세로 꿀몽이지만 가증한주 참대 망직 시작이 가지 참대 아니 미기빌리 안티한 찌양기 캬버 안티 제부세사 다레 나비 레세티 아니 티난기 따지 레미기 쭉 나와야 찌양기 캬버티 다 가지 쉬 선바도지 차고레스라
So we're going to continue from the point that we left off in the previous sessions. Altogether, we are now looking at a presentation of karma. Particularly here, we're looking at a presentation of the 10 known virtues. And in the previous couple of sessions, we had a look at a section that explained the distinctions that are made with respect to the heaviness or lightness of the actions. And following that, we have an exposition of the results of those actions. So here we're looking at negative actions, right? So the 10 parts of non-virtuous actions. This is what we've been looking at in the last couple of sessions.
어디리다 지당기 레세디 개침부 슈치 송구요레스 사디 송고야 쪼로디 안주 대원 되고요 동안 되고요 말아왔어 사디 대두기 아니 대두기 남샤티 레 레옴 그게 따지 아니 제발 때니 더 연구 여버디 시우 슈즈레스 티야 르가 이숨기 kunjula teni devadang dunga sedita yungu yobati ranjongku zu di tisungu yoras
So then this is an important point for us. It's important point for us to look at the presentation of karma because first of all, we recognize that personal experience, that all of us are seeking happiness and well-being and we wish to not experience suffering or pain. So our wishes to experience happiness and not to have suffering depend upon what we seek for depends upon our actions. This is what we call karma. And as such, when we look at the way that we act, physical actions, verbal actions, and mental actions, it depends upon which we have those different experiences.
terida dichidige da lunga yisumgi da chidan chobal da dhamre yungu yorda ya chawadile ya les sigdos da lunga yisumgi chawala ya les tie le yakso jodan di ani zu kono la ya sem la ya rali gire se di da dire da nama sanji bi chu da ji shitsaro ji di chagores
So the type of activities, type of actions that we perform, physical, verbal, mental actions is what we call karma. And as such, when you look at the multitude of components that we speak about in relation to karma, the main one, the main component is our motivation. So our karmas, our actions depend upon our motivations. And this is an important point for the motivation, our state of mind is the basis of the Buddhist tradition.
terda da kono se di samlo de la ya ta samlo di ton rogoras ta samlo yakso di pena ani chagdang monsong ro chagdang monsong 기 샤왕선한테 차단 모습 슉 집이 왕기 들어봐이나 아니 차와디 다 간지 차와도 독자 차로 그랬어 독자 차 가르스나 아니 지금 랑라야 펜도 매봐 아니 셴라야 펜도 매봐 매뱀바 마세 란시 니깔이야 아니 지금 동한 종야기 깬자지 차로건자 차단 모습기 온도 송바이나 콜론디 두가레스 디왕기 차와디 레디 레 미기와싱이 다 간지 미기와세드레스라.
So we spoke about the motivational factor, which has to do with our way of thinking. So of the varieties of ways of thinking that we have, here when we look at this presentation and what the type of motivation, the way of thinking that motivates our actions, when our mind is controlled by anger, attachment, and ignorance, and they become very strong, right? So strong forms of anger, attachment, and ignorance, and we perform actions on the basis of those motivations, actions become negative actions. And you might wonder what makes them negative actions. Well, you can say that to begin with, they are of no benefit to ourselves, and they're also of no benefit to others. Not only they are of no benefit to ourselves and others, they're harmful to oneself and others. And therefore, in the Buddhist terminology, we call those actions non-virtuous actions.
데르다 디나 콜롱 야가디 가르세 디응거다 콜롱 야가디 콜롱 야가디 ngazoda ke chocho jimebanzo 콜롱 야가디 다 중국도 서랑귤이야 디인자 당한주 롭종치 곰기야 냠레 체세디 간지 샘바 야부 수수귤이야 피기다 식 통부시야바는다 잠인지 잔주고 샘세디 로 딘디지 모여나 간지 지 란시 니갈이야 마페나야 민능이징이 제거와 삼성 로 딘디지 레바이나 안 딘디지 토는 로트와나다 아니 콜론디 상부레스 라 콜론디 상부레스 간신 란시 니갈에 팽그레스 디토비.
So such are negative motivations are afflictive states of mind, but we also have positive motivations. Now, positive motivations are not easily generated. It's not easy to generate those positive motivations. We, first of all, study how to give rise to those positive motivations. So we study and we are using certain terminology. We study and we also training. We study certain terminology, like, for example, loving kindness and compassion, the mind of enlightenment. So we take up those states of mind, the training in those states of mind, so that if we are not going to be able to be of benefit to ourselves and others, even if we cannot benefit ourselves and others, at the very least, we want to abstain from harming them. So that is considered to be positive. It's considered to be positive because it is of benefit to oneself and others.
데르다 디니 다 콜롱 두자 그토 다 룽아기 차와 룽아 이송 차와 난다 아니 류기 소체바 마지막에 뭐 성어체바 아니 로바 임바 세디 디시온디 다 메기오 주는 그 류기 넘버 시디 시온디 류레 때문에 넘버 시디 시온디 지양기 캐버디 소체바디 지슈레스 데니 디니마 파운딩 로 지양기 캐버로 딘디직 송도 디 내가 찍으래샤스 로.
So then looking at negative actions are motivated by a negative motivation. So motivated by negative state of mind, we perform verbal, physical, verbal, and mental activities. So like, for example, actions of body, physical activities, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. When the text explains the heaviness or lightness of these actions. It says that they range from the heaviest to the lightest. So killing is regarded to be the heaviest.
어디리다 데니 가이선다 속죄버디 지슈임버디 녀버치슈임버디 만 가르레스 라운디 만주 수임바이나야 로 란신 수임바이나야 속차 간다지임바이나야 수수레 지슈디 짜치슈디 소트 치기로스 소트 차고라 로 쇼직비 아니 에 돈로 냠 타바지네요 수수 쏙 예, 통온디 아니 쏙 송깁지야기 탑시 잠을 치기도 왔어 인자 짜치슈 쏙 차건자 쏙 쳐봐이나 녀바 치슈티 차그레스 로 쏙다 균너 론중이 쳐봐이나 균너 론주 참말로 땅고 촌의 쏙 쳐도 땅그라 왔어 인자 쏙 쳐봐디 녀바 치슈인 바이 균zen 요레스
So killing is regarded to be the heaviest fault, the heaviest negative action. And the reason for that is looking at the things that we value the most for ourselves and also what others value the most. All of us value our life. That's the most precious thing to us. Not only ourselves as human beings, but when you look at other life forms, even the most wretched animal value its lives. So therefore, since our life is so precious to us, we value that so much, killing is regarded as the heaviest action amongst the physical actions. So even to the point in which if we have to give up our money and possessions and so forth, we would do that in order to sustain, in order to preserve our life. And therefore killing is regarded as the heaviest.
데리다 디니 직슈고야 로즈레야 카징 안주 산니마데라 카징 산니마데레 아니 안주다 겐히 겐히 동바치 심바레스 데니 차니 남미 사간란 로온디 콘서 카시지기 겐히 동발랭이 카시지기로 코란도 깨져로 시엔다 페시 딜라고서 송야베 카고 펜 도장 소지야바나 세슈고도 다 디세바나 아니 직 동범메바 차도르 삼성 인디 덕버서로 지 요사레 다디 디니모들에 양에게 비게 겐니 동베나로라야 송장가나로라야 속죄 방바세치 속죄 방바세치 요레스 아니 기우추 난그 아니 류 넘버 시 난기 당보들에야 속죄 미기빌레세치 니 비기다 미 지버치냐레스 이네 디니 테스 개발지 디니모등에 체로 뒤저로 조마송스러 이네 디 테스트 마체와나 비기 샘나로야 딱다시 라트 메주로 소르송스.
So at this point in time, Geshe wants to make a comment about what we did last week. So last Sunday, Geshe, during the general teaching session, was given the refuge vow, and including the vow of approaching virtue. So there were a few people that have taken upon themselves the vow of approaching virtue. And following that, Geshe had a conversation with a couple of people at the cafe. And Geshe got the impression that they were quite concerned about giving up killing or their ability to give up killing. In that conversation, someone was saying that they found it extremely difficult because, for example, sometimes if a mosquito alights on our skin, if they bite us, then immediately we kind of immediate reaction would be to squash it. So they said that it's very difficult actually to abstain from killing. And the impression that Geshe had is that kind of the person was probably thinking that such a thing would cause them to abandon the vow. So let's look at that. We have the vow of approaching virtue, in which you need to guard against one of those. You need to guard against one of those 5 things, or all of those 5 things, including killing. Right. So we use the term killing here. Then we have the presentation of the 10 non-virtues, and the first one is killing. So it's the same word, same term. However, when you look at the vow of approaching virtue and what you need to abstain from when you abstain from killing, and you look at the presentation of the 10 non-virtues, there are slight differences. It's not that they're exactly the same. There's slight differences, and it's good to be aware of that. So Geshe thought of saying a few words about it.
어디래다 딘자 단당한줄 류기 미기 주시온디 속주글레 세디 속주글레 참말로야 로 간다스 제바 있느냐 아니 지 베나 다좀 바 있는다 찬주셈 바 있는다 부신진 바 있는다 안디 참마 속주글레 디 디샤고레스 타비기 게니 돈베칼야 디 난게 제다와 찍려야 문제 지그라마도 참말로 아니 게니 돈베기 손자기 짜와디 야 문제 지그여 말했다 디 가르스는 다미 속제바틀이야 미 속제바틀이야 샤여다 디치슈디야 지여레스다 미 속제바디 아니 레치슈디 디 레레 슈바이나 아니 게닝 돈비 짜와똥로야지 어 디송고레스
아니 석주바디 깐순에 석주바로 그래서 못하다마이나 디라서바데 지금
레
까마촌에 되는 쇼와이나.
야 라나 디기다
So then, with respect to the 10 known virtues, the first of the 10 known virtues is killing, and as such, we regard the killing of everything that is alive. So it might be an arhat or a bodhisattva or a small animal, a tiny and minute creature. Killing any of them is regarded as a non-virtuous action. So that's within the presentation of the 10 known virtues. But then we will look at the vow of approaching virtue, which requires abstention from killing. It is not the killing of anything that is alive. It refers to a particular type of killing. So the thing that will cause you to lose the vow would be an intentional killing of a human being. This is what we commit to in the vow. We commit to abstain from killing another human being. And if you kill another human being, that will cause you to break the vow or to lose the vow.
네 까불라 땅 가서는 땅안주 비기게 직빈 돈로세바디 니바틴디요 말이 메세바디 니바치아레도 라원디게 샘나라야 독바디 가리용 글쓰나 용초를 쓰라반다 직 ENG 소를 지기도 삼성 독바 용쓰라다 디 나랑 통줄이야 다디 년가 치시로 디 ENG기 내 수직 싸워니는 말이스 로 소수 미미차니 메자치가 지와다 아니 돈로도 줘야 통종치와 딘디 싸워니는 말이스 뭐여 내술이야 개체종직 토니 송구요레스다 개체종직 토니 차요레스 로
So then someone might think that there is no fault in killing animals, and human beings are much better or much greater than animals. Someone might say that this attitude is a discriminatory attitude. It is a divisive or discriminatory attitude. But it is not like that. It is not that when we look at the vow of approaching virtue, which says that one should abstain from killing another human being, it's not that then we look down on other living beings. That's not the attitude that we take in looking down at other living beings. It's rather that when we look at life and what can be done in this life, there's, you could say, an order of importance.
다 개체종 가르레스 라운디 배낭 안속에 다 산기비 추 시자진 시바나 산기비 추 디타토온디 셴덴 드야지 샴페인 드야지 차게레스다 샴페인 야부 지드야리아 알담 수수기 땡디 토네 아니 드투야 니바치 고그라다 디 니바 찬자 용인디 미 땡라마도 땡 샴발라 싸우니니 요 말이스 싸우니니 요 말. 학든 다지 든뒤 땐도 지고이나 소수기 세디난 거지 또그 담섬 다 담다 요 말다 콘스다 지 아니 세기체도 지 로. 딘리질이야 지 류넨 데어마다 텔을 사가지 든뒤 땐래야 다 드투게지 기요 말왔다 로. 아니 셴파샤니 장기 되게 야부지 드투게지 요 말왔다. 그래서 탐치 그때 너들 drifting이 땡 캬벌진디 미땡 차고레스 찍드레셔스로.
So one point to think about it, at least when we look at it from the point of view of the Buddhist tradition, right? So from the point of view of the Buddhist tradition, what we want to be, what we want to develop into, is to be of benefit to others. To be able to be of benefit to others to a great degree, we need to have a certain basis, a certain working basis. This working basis need to give us the ability to work for the sake of others. And as such, when we look at having this basis, this being a human being, that provides us with the greatest ability to be of benefit to others. And when you look at other living beings, they don't have that working basis, the basis that will enable them to be of benefit, greater benefits to other living beings. So then when you think about it, for example, in relation to animals, whether they have, in having this basis, the support of being an animal, whether they have the ability to be of benefit to others, well, let alone being of benefit to others, it is actually quite hard to be of benefit to oneself when you think about it as a long-term benefit to oneself. Because living as an animal, when you look at the way that animals live, it seems the main concern is for food and it's hard to say food and clothing and social interaction, but you can say that there is a constant pursuit after food and shelter and so forth. And therefore, living as an animal, there is no possibility of securing this long-term benefit of others.
데리다 베나다 딘자타 nganzu 라 nganzu 저지기 미 류내야 체도 깔레갸고 거다스 깔레갸니 아니 규상부지 드니 류티 랭 고다 류티 토니 아니 소디 라울로니 체치 아 장치니 남주 중국도스 남주 중야기 때 남주 초기비 남주 기야기 때인데 미류티 샤오서 디주고 거레스 다 미류 돌아야 남주 베제타니 아니 냠낸 체니 타르 상기야 대 심전 탐지기 된도 상로타니 상기고 거레스 상기 차비 제라 임바이나 라와 용소 토비 까바이네야 쌈 셴도 비 라와 토니 미 아니 루지 마나 타메레도스 미 루지 마나 바이나 아니 상기야 거된데 드툭 마르스 심전 탐지기 비 아니 체도 저체 지역 디어 말했다. 간지 저체 약슈디 비게 게제션 람데 지바 람데 닐루 마테니 드야 디렌도 마도 아니 셴바 다 세번인지 전부다 넘버 탐지 kim비 이시 여버 잠기 다 팽금도 왔어. 딘자 타르도 온디 제부 꾸니 온도 제고르세 주기 공원도 제고야 균센디야 디차드샤스. 딘자 케체슈디 케체슈디 미르덴디 아니 갈 때나 미르덴 케체슈 임반자 다디 촐라 땅바이나 배 마스버드니 예바침부 자에드 디레샤스로.
Now, another point is when we think of how hard it is for us to do everything that needs to be done in order to attain a human body, and for what end do we work in order to secure a human body? First of all, in order to create the causes for attaining a human body, for being born as a human being with a human body, the causes need to be positive or good causes. For them, we need to practice, we need to train, we need to develop our wisdom. And the best way to do it is on the basis of a human body. So we take up those training, we practice, we train in assembling the causes for being born as a human being on the basis of a human being. But our goal at the end is to become Buddha. Our goal is to become Buddha in order to be of benefit to other living beings. So we think that, first of all, there is a certain freedom that you attain when you become a Buddha. But also, in order to follow the steps of the path that lead to the state of Buddhahood, you need to have a certain freedom. You need to have the freedom to practice, to think, to develop your wisdom and so forth, so that you can become a Buddha. And without having a human body, it will not be possible. So without having a human body, We will not be able to follow the path that leads to Buddhahood. And also, we're not going to be able to be of benefit to others, in the sense that when you think of what being of benefit to others entails, you can be of benefit to others if you can speak, if you can reason, if you can show others what reality is, if you can teach them how things exist, which means that you might become Buddha and you might have loving kindness and compassion and an insight into reality, but without being able to speak, without being able to teach it to others, to reason and so forth, you're not going to be able to benefit others. So for that, when we attain the state of Buddhahood, we attain of the Buddha bodies. One body that we attain is called the Rupakaya, the form body of Buddha. And the form body of Buddha is said to be for the benefit of others. And therefore, in order to attain that state in which we are able to be of benefit, in which we will able to be of benefit to others, we need to then use our human body in order to pursue that state. And therefore, when you think of the action of killing, particularly in relation to the vow, so killing another human being is regarded as very negative because we're damaging a body that has the capacity to act as a basis for pursuing the state of Buddhahood. So from that perspective, it is regarded as very negative.
어디를 된자 단다 개닝이 dombe domba 참마기다 직자와도 직래야 속죄바 데 시비 속죄글레디 미세비 속죄글레데레스 간스나 domba 칸르치 렘바이나야 domba 람위 고den 쪼디 랑기 남주 야기 땅에 쳇 랑기 남주 콤불 땅에 아니 시덴래야 다 domba 랭기어레스 domba 랭기 고den 쪼디 데레샤스 다 남주 아니 촉드키와 용약이 땐 쪼디 미땐 인바인자 딘리지 촐라 땅바이나 domba 람와데 딩이우드 벳 ям가 차고 벳 ям가 차고자 곧 싸와리 생고야디 델 투기도 왔어라 디 인지민 투기 샤고도 쓰지다 아니 돈들라 소바 무슨라 소바 가리기 속제바이나야 녀바 요 말슬라고 뭐 야담 속지비 레싱이디 사고레스 이나야 비다지 아니 싸와시 난기 속제바디 고 제라바질 샤고야기 genzendi tiresasro.
And therefore, again, looking at the vow of approaching virtue that is given in the context of the refuge ceremony, when we refer to the action of killing, which is to be given up in relation to the vow, it is a specific type of killing. It is the killing of another human being. So when we take upon ourselves such a vow, we take such a vow and create a basis for the development of our own wisdom, for increasing our own wisdom. So the base for taking upon ourselves the vow is a base. The basis for taking upon ourselves this vow is having a human being, having a body, of a human being. And therefore, when you think about it in relation to the vow that we take, the vow of approaching virtue, in which we commit ourselves to abstain from killing another human being, killing another human being is the opposite of using this precious basis for developing wisdom and such. So this is regarded as, so when we take upon ourselves the vow of approaching virtue, and we have those 5 things that we need to abstain from, of the 5, 4 of them are called the roots. Of the 4 roots, killing is one root. Now, so we need to abstain from killing another human being, but this is not to say that if you kill other living beings like insects and such, there's no fault in doing that. Of course, it is faulty. Of course, it is a negative action to kill other living beings, but still, in relation to the vow that we take, the thing that is opposite to the vow that we have is killing as one of the 4 roots.
딘자다 페나 랑기기 다 미지기로 랑기 속 교배가 쳐도 미생기 속 초바이나 디 고든치에요 말스 디 고든치에 말 지그바라스 다 다 랑기 피 미기 류덴 상보디 같이 수 경주 네트워크야 다 상로 야부다나 셴펜 투투야기 타메비 승진을 펜투야기 니버디 땡들이 여반자 다디 체도 아니 지 자와 총자 그리글이야 아니 믹스 요레스 다 믹스 산지다 믹스 요야 되고 균센 뎀비톤 제마도 지 셴바키 레몬도 어두 간지 랭니 넘버 제세디 아니 가리 아니 고바치야도 가리 가샤치야도 가샤 총도 어디서 야뭐 스타트인기 남주디 줌발이야 아니 dombaleni pigi lunga ku kunju tom ne drobaina ani namju tsama yongyal ya yaja yadam ba pengyores ro ta diresh ro sanji gi ta domba shu kechimuchin sonde goya di direshas.
So when we think about, for example, protecting our own life, there's no purpose in killing others in order to protect our own life. There's no purpose in taking others' life in order to protect our own life. So when we look at it from this perspective, we've attained a good body. We want to live a long life so that in a long life will be of benefit to others. We want to provide others with benefit and bliss to infinite living beings. So there are many things that we can do in order to benefit many living beings. And when you look at the Buddha's teachings, it seems that when you develop that attitude, when you recognize that you have attained a good body, you want to live long in order to be of benefit to infinite living beings, there are certain situations where a permission is given for acting in a particular negative way. Like, for example, there's a special situation in which there is a permission, for example, to kill. But those cases are discussed in a very particular way, kind of. They're just, you can say, very few of those cases which are mentioned in scripture. And therefore, when you approach a certain situation and you wonder what's the best way to proceed, you need to look at the situation and have an assessment of what would be the benefit in acting in that way and why is that action prohibited. So when you then contrast the two, prohibition and the purpose of doing it anyway, you need to have a correct assessment of which one is, you can say, greater or outweighs the other one. Could be a situation in which the purpose of doing a particular action would be greater than the prohibition. So you need to have this assessment at some point. But anyway, when we look at the vows that we take and the guarding of the vows that we take, if we guard our vows in a good way, it acts as a basis of developing a clear mind. And as such, vows become kind of a very important part of our practice.
Drebudi ro ta lemgi wachi bi drebu la khari yong gor setri sumbal sum drebu ta drebu bi da namrang gi chan da nameng gi drebu gyentong gi drebu ani dagbe drebu odus ta zu shiru shag do as ro sum hong kong da.
So then, with that in mind, we're going to go back to the text and pick up from the presentation of the results of action. So we've looked at the presentation of the 10 non-virtues. We looked at the section that explained the distinctions that are made with respect to the heaviness or lightness of those actions. And now we're going to look at the presentation of their effects. And as such, it begins with a 3-point outline. The fully ripened effect, the effect concordant with the cause, and the dominant or environmental effect.
Ta dire da bena ta naming gi drebu slaun di thi number member gyu tindi ji sabal teni thi drebu la khari yong gor slaun di bena shen la ya dunga teba na thi drebu la ya sosu dunga nyong go ya ingores ro bena shengi sok cheba na thi drebu la ya rangi che thon ro ya rangi che thon ro ya 아니 디기 균등 데블이야 아니 지 랑기 속 총행기 아니 깬다 체대봐 라 어딘지 용거레스 딘지 송거레스 라
So what this section is highlighting, what it's saying is that the actions that we take have a certain effect, like for example, um, a ripening effect. So if you cause others suffering, the result of that would be you yourself experiencing suffering, one's own suffering. If you kill others, for example, the result would be having a shorter life. When we look about it from the point of view of results which are called effect concordant with the cause, which means results um, um, results which are similar to the cause that have created them, killing others will result in oneself being killed and such.
다 된데만 로셔나 디기도스라 담보니 렐람 주부 레레양 지 비다 시엠 콜롱 독숨 되자세된 때무숨 총리체숨 라 템비 에 예와숨숨 용그레스 델라 소주소 첨부 주부 레레 야 예와 진 주부 레레이다 총 주부 레레 돈르기와 사용무시 송라 사유 사주빈 돌레니 총리니긴 제부 도드 송소스.
Now, looking first off at the fully ripened effect, since each of the 10 parts of action depends on whether the basis, the three poisons, is small, intermediate, or great, the fully ripened effect is also threefold. Levels of yogic practice says that through each of the 10 great ones, the great act of killing and so forth, you're reborn as a hell being. Through each of the 10 intermediate ones, you're reborn as a hungry ghost, and through each of the 10 small ones, you're reborn as an animal. In the 10 Grand Sutra, the effects of small and intermediate ones are said to be the other way around.
레다니바니 난조 네 미르케냐 름바터 세통한다스란다 비게 소주기 레기 다 균통을 제부도 지 순거다디 소디 아 롱주기 퐁바 아 마진링기다 균통 제부 초모 마송바 교와 아니 메상조 로용기 균통 제부 아 kuwa mawa dang zawa son jimba de yidu mawa datyo ba de shenji tsingmi nyemba dang chagda monson she chewa wos dindigi da migiyo chugi and lela den da dili yungres.
The effect concordant with the cause, effects similar to the cause that have created them, says each of the 10 non-virtuous parts of actions also give rise to an effect concordant with the cause, so that even when you have left the lower rebirths and taken rebirth as a human being, your life will be short. That corresponds to the action of killing. You will lack wealth corresponding to the act of taking what was not given to you or stealing. Your partner will leave you corresponding to sexual misconduct. You will be slandered, you will be separated from loved ones, you will hear unpleasant speech. Others will not listen to you. And each of the three, attachment, anger, and confusion pertaining to the non-virtues of mind, will predominate respectively.
Terda kanji sozola ya lengni ye chawa ani kidu kandachi yungu yobayna di ko gyugen hamajila teni chongare mado gyugen jila madem ba debuji ta yong yomars ta takche yoras ta sanji sonu takchen son yoris ra.
In short, what the Buddha has said before, that whatever happiness or suffering we experience, it depends upon corresponding cause and conditions that we have created before. None of them arises without its corresponding cause and conditions.
Da sombani sok chobani sok chobi da dagbe devus isungo sare sok chobani chi jigdengi satong da men da jebu sok tun chongwa sok sos maji lengini temba da char chewa da jebu nyongwa loyem gini damzab da janji mawa da nyam magawa sok zund mawe shini shenle dan ripchubi legi tagiba mungiwa sok. Chami lene sabshok member dan tomen dan rokawa sok. Nga zumbi ni sabshok dombu dan serma dan do dan sema dan chomu sok mama. Sikyewe ni drebu jongshin la drebu mechaba dan tu mayin bar yang drebu chaba sok. Napsum gini pusum soba tamje lodan dawa da shagri re yang nyamba sok. Nesum gi yamdan, nebadan, nengobadan, chubadan, parugi mansoli, chunu mama sok. Logdi ni nujin jigdenan jonkun chok nuba sok. Gyurogres.
Now let's look at the dominant or environmental effect. The dominant or environmental effect of killing is that the surrounding environment, food, drink, medicine, harvest, and the like, will have little potency. The environmental effect of stealing is that there will be great droughts, torrential rains, poor harvests, and so forth. The environmental effect of sexual misconduct is there will be foul swamps, excessive filth, unpleasant odors, and so forth. The environmental effects of lying is that any work, whether in fields or boats and so on, will not succeed. The environmental effect of divisive speech is that the area will be bumpy and uneven, making it difficult to travel and so on. The environmental effect of harsh speech is that the area will be full of logs, brambles, rocks, pebbles, pot shreds, and so forth. The environmental effects of idle talk is that fruit trees will bear no fruit or will bear fruit out of season and so forth. The environmental effect of covetousness is that everything excellent will deteriorate year by year, month by month, and day by day, and so forth. The environmental effects of harmful intent is a multitude of epidemics, injuries, infections, disputes, wars with enemy troops, and so forth. The environmental effect of wrong views is an environment where the best sources of provisions will be exhausted, and so forth.
Niba karbu le set. Karbu le dan drebu le gewa dan gewi le drebu. Tambu sok choba dan majamba lamba. Loyim la nyemi ki samba chen. Gewi samba de dembe. Teda yang tabur dombi jowa cheba dan. Damba thar tuba chibi. Lui ki le sos. Gewi le set. So tindijile ya ngunzi che gogres.
Now, the second part of the presentation of karma begins with virtuous actions and their effects. So this has 2 points, virtuous actions and their effects. Beginning with virtuous actions. There are the physical acts that with a virtuous mind, cognizing the fault of killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, correctly refraining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and succeed in having refrained from them.
Terda ganji lugi migibe le tomba ro lugi migibe le tomba la ya lugi migibe le cheba le teni ani ta debu kari yungri set di tila ya tesi koa chawa na and da di lugi migibe le di 다 야부 매바지 다 소르그라스 다 딘지지 소르든 다 비기 다 녀반 통세난자 견 통세난자 간지 딘지지기 아니 샘소르지 레바이나 아니 류 메기위 레 제발야다 돔투그레스 로 아니 녀반 통위 삼바딜야다 기위 삼바스 어 딘지지기 삼바 디톤 요바나 아니 류 메기와 돔투그레스 다 류 메기와 디기 녀바치 만통바이나 다 디 캡상 소로지 다 디기 소로지 소르바이나 다디 각담 제데 각부 쇼지로 왔어.
So here the section refers to abstaining from non-virtuous actions, like for example, refraining, restraining our physical activities. So if you wonder, what is the result of refraining from non-virtuous actions? Well, to begin with, we're speaking about refraining from non-virtuous action that constitute a virtuous action. In order to be able to do that, we need to see um, the refraining from non-virtuous action as a positive thing. In order to do that, we need to see the benefit, the profit that we get from abstaining from non-virtuous. And in order to do that, we need to recognize negative actions for being negative actions. If you see the fault in negative actions, then naturally a sense of restraint will arise in your mind. When you see that the result of negative actions is a negative result, then you will develop in your mind the ability or the aptitude to abstain from them, and that would be a virtuous state. Now, if you see no fault in negative actions, if you think that there is no problem or no fault in such non-virtuous actions, of course, it'd be very difficult to abstain from them.
데르다 딘디게 가르다 류기 미기웨 레기다 지 니미 다 디체는 되게 말을 삼성게 지 대박이야 증거로서 다 대박이야 다 규견디 다 규견 약슈디 남주들이스 랭이 남바 제통 남주들이스 다 딘디게 체 통부 레마도 바네야 샘딘이 다지 이체 용야지 다 용거로서 이체 용야지 that the Digmare Samsung, that the Sanji Sonsa, that the pay and in Yabachimbuji Resha, that Digmare Samsung give each Tebalealaya, then Sosa Division said, Kitchen with Chago Sares, Sosa Division said, Dita, so and G Chambuchea, and G Tangasaya, Manesaya, and in Chobapia, and in Kosun to Dela Soba Dindi Shanya, so what did the gewi chawa chiwagi gejur gita gyupusum soba chik chago resra.
So here this section mentions non-virtuous actions of bodies, this way of physical behavior that is not right. So when you think about it as this is not the right thing to do, it is not okay to do this, this attitude is a virtuous attitude. Now, the best way to develop that virtuous attitude is to develop our own wisdom that will be able to well discriminate or discern between what is positive and negative, and also that would be able to discern the negativity in performing certain actions. Now, even if you haven't got to the point in which you have developed that wisdom that enables you to discriminate well between what is positive and negative, if you base your attitude upon faith, then that's also a good way to proceed. Better than that, of course, is to develop wisdom. But if you haven't developed wisdom yet, at least you can think that if you have trust in the teachings of the Buddha, then you can think, I need to abstain from such negative behavior because this is at least what I find in the Buddha's teachings. This is what the Buddha taught. So we use this type of faith also as a component in our accumulation of the collections, purification of negativities and obscurations, to support that. In order to support the development of faith, we make offerings, we recite mantras, such as, for example, the six-syllable mantra of Mani Padme Hum. We construct statues and such representations of the enlightened qualities of body, speech, and mind. All of these are acting as perfect causes for developing faith and the other things which will support our abstention from negative actions.
Yangonda the Chedendo Chipu Shanding Manichi Madanga Jimana, and all your
Now, if you only construct statues, stupas, and so forth, but you don't do any recitations of Om Mani Padme Hum, then there's not much benefit. It's not accusing anyone here.
Deresha, didn't Resha, Ani the Yashudi Namjudereta, Namjug Nangi, Namju Chodu Juvadi, and Neluk topic, Namjut, Neluk Hakovaina, Neluk Hakoina, and Momba singing the Segores, and Momba di Shinjolo by Hakores, Momba Shinjolo by Hakovana, Mombi Wangi, and Chakbakia, Chakbi Lodia, Lo Shinjolo imba. Shedangia, Shedanglodia, Lo Shinjoloimba, the Shinjologiki Jesu Trani, 자와디 자와 농주기 봐 사문 통투 거스 다 견 사문 통투 거스 그래서 아니 야슈드 남주들에서 그래서 남주 야부치 용약이 체도 아니 댄상부치 미 리덴치 레야라야 베춘치 미 리덴 레야가 규포순 소바디 아니 수점 길라바레스 송요레스 온디균 수점 레시 메스 그 아니 비 땡기 다베가 탁주는 셰자요 시지 차관자 어디 캘렌치 안 델레야 이질레데 치는 로바나 안다 야부로 왔으라.
So we spoke about the development of wisdom, and the best type of wisdom that can be developed is the wisdom that sees the way that things exist, wisdom that sees reality. This type of wisdom is the wisdom that clears away confusion, or particular type of confusion, distorting confusion, the one that is the type of confusion that is involved with an erroneous apprehension. So because of that confusion and erroneous apprehension, attachment arises, and attachment is also an erroneous state of mind. Anger arises. Anger is also an erroneous state of mind. And due to such erroneous apprehension, we perform actions, negative actions. So we need to see the fault in that process. And the best way to see that is to develop wisdom. And the best type of wisdom that we can develop is the one that sees those mistakes. Now, in order to develop that wisdom, we need to have a good basis. And the good basis that we use is a basis of having a human body, being a human being. And the best causes that can be created for attaining this good basis as a human being is the training in ethical discipline. As the Buddha, the Lord of the Teachings, said in one of his teachings, there is no higher or no better than ethical discipline for attaining a human body.
어디니 로즈레서 다 미르레야 밀레야 가르치는 남주 초도교 여선 밀레야 류 익세와 류 나겠다 지금 미 레버디 믹세와지 연구여서레스 로 배낭한테 텐디기 세리바이나야 미 레버디 비길이야 답발견 통원디기 에 십사부 때와는 미 레버디 마 지시 아니 짜짜더지 강여서레스 로 짜기 짜디 가르스는 짜디 제당 아주 류가 나와야 지 차로야 결람지 채고래야 롱로야 로 롱로야 결람 소디 짜차샤스 아니 짤 템비게 아니 지 샘근도당 름바디야 14호 슈진 송여다 디 아니 소차 셴그 룰라야 매바인자 아니 남주디 게투기요 말스 딘디지 소고도스라 디 양안도 다가가고 마도 이즈나 딘디 송고도스라 디텐데 인사레스.
So that is possible on the basis of being a human being. And we need to see that. We also need to see what makes it special in terms of the development of our wisdom as being human beings. So for example, if you look at the brain structure from a scientific perspective, if you were to have an imaging of the brain, then you will see the system of blood veins or system of channels, blood channels in the brain, or energy channels and so forth. All of them are facilitating the operation of the consciousness on the basis of a human brain, you can say. Whereas when you look at the brains of other living beings and the structure of the brain, then since it is a different structure, it does not allow for the operation of a consciousness that operates like a consciousness of a human being.
어디를 딘자다 류딜이야 지 아니 자 로단 다 담을 여면서 아니 류디야 손지지 류디 짱마 치냐 로 아니 지 류기 비 가서다 지 아니 다 류기 믹스기 다지 니발라 소바 어두소베 손제 야부치네 아니 돔니 드로바이나 아니 남지키엘에 팽겨레스 로 어디 다디 가정 마주치는 로자바나 아니 다 차다 모습 게마도 안 셴바키 땡 제투고 말았다 디자 내가 딘딜 때니다 돈바세 디쇼 계시모 소야디 디레샤스.
So we have a system of channels that run through the body, blood vessels, neurons, energy channels, what have you. So we need to make sure that we keep this body going. We guard the body, we keep it clean and so forth, so that we will protect the ability that we have for development. And the best thing that we can develop is our own wisdom. So if we do not do that, if we do not guard what needs to be guarded, if we give way to anger, attachment, and ignorance, we will get no benefit from that, in a sense that if we don't guard our body, if we don't guard our mind, if we don't allow that development of wisdom, only anger and attachment and ignorance would operate, nothing else. And therefore, it's so important to make sure that we do guard.
Reda jeza zag rodang to da deng ye jidan ya sing mes ra ina ya mi zu lau das da pena ani lu ya bu nya dan pena kang ba di ya bu zama chi nya wa ina ani kang bi gi mi gi ti gi za di level ya ani pen de wa shu chen bo res kang ba ya bu ti di ya bu chu ba ina ani ribal phengres thasal dindi song pe mang bo res ra.
So Geshe doesn't say that, no, he's not a scholar in anatomy, but the way that you speak about it in Tibetan language is that you call all the channels that go through all the, say, system of means of transport in the body, you call them channels. So we have blood veins, we have a neuron system, we have energy channels and so forth. So it was said that if you guard those channels well, and you see how connected they are, you can see that, for example, keeping the sole of your feet healthy and clean is also connected with the operation of the brain. I guess what Geshe is referring to is reflexology, right? So you have certain, he spoke about having certain pressure points in the heel that affect the operation of the brain or the operation of your head and so forth. So at least Geshe said that this is what he had some monks saying in the monastery.
Asian nga gi shedang yi gi sum le yang jar de nga gi shedang yi gi sum le yang jar de kyabar ne nga gi le da yi gi le she chao she sa yung u song be jedang samba dang jorwa dang ta du nam chiri bar jar de so je pom be le la jana shin sim jen chen nos samba ni nyiming tong we pon de bo jorwa ne so ba 양다고 덤비 뒤제도 타도는 양다고 덤버 조비 류기 레소 수디 셴시버 차오스.
So reading through the rest of this section, so we started reading through virtuous actions. So we spoke about virtuous actions of body, abstaining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. Now, this is also applied likewise to the 4 of speech and the 3 of mind. The difference being that they are called actions of speech and action of the mind, as stated in the level of yogic practice. So this should be applied to the basis, attitude, performance, and completion is appropriate. When applied to the path of action of avoiding killing, the basis is another sentient being. The attitude is the wish to avoid it, having seen its faults. The performance is to put effort into completely abstaining from killing, and the completion is the physical act of having successfully refrained from it. The other path of actions should also be understood in this manner.
The nibal sum namini gewi le chongodan rindan chembe medan deladan kam komaniji har kios güntundan jebuni megiwali dogdi jaros.
Let's look at the effects of virtuous actions. From amongst the 3 effects of the virtuous paths of action, the fully ripened effect is to be born as a human being, a desire realm god, or a god of the 2 upper realms, through the force of small, intermediate, or great virtuous action. In the case of the effect concordant with the cause and the dominant or environmental effect, these are the opposite of the respective effects from, from the non-virtuous actions.
Terda namen di giwile chungu dan jing dan chembe medan dola dan kam koma kegres. Da mi kewa di ani chik debu chungshu dojili ya jardoaz. Da di ani debil hadi ani da di karso da chik samdang da mambu yungu yasares. Pena nganzu lamla ya lamngin jimbay na lamla ya lamngin jimbay na lamla lavya la ya nginjong gi sambadi yang kechenbu shojik chik chagores ta nginjong gi samba kiya gi tendi ani debi mi gi tendi chok kyobores lavyores ra chok kyoba chagores kanzan kola ya gadu ki tso mambu shojik kanga tego yobanza ani nyeming tonya di lela yungores nyeming tombayna nyeming kadzu shuk chemo tonga di togi ani teda tandogi kowa teda tandogi samba di shuk cherdowa di lebayna ngenjong samba singidires inza ngenjong samba kibi ten chodu kiwa di debi mi ten res dindi songores rwa.
And one point that came up in this section says that from amongst the three effects of the virtuous passive action, the fully ripened effect, what is called the fruitional effect. So the fruitional effect is to be born as a human being, a desire realm God, or a God of the two upper realms for the force of small, intermediate, or great virtuous actions. So looking at the way that Lama Tsongkhapa phrases that, he says that the small result is being born as a human being. The intermediate one would be a desire around God, and the great result would be to be born as a God of the two upper realms. Now here you need to think about it, and there are many ways to think about what Lama Tsongkhapa says here. One thing that we can recognize is that in order to develop, when you train, train in order to give rise to a path in your continuum, what you need to train it is the development of the determination to live cyclic existence, what we call renunciation. It is important to develop that determination to emerge. For that, you need to see the faults in cyclic existence. Now, if you're born as a human being using that basis of the body of a human being, you have the best possibility, the best opportunity for recognizing the faults in cyclic existence in samsara. On the basis of having a body as a human being, that provides you with the best scenario for recognizing those faults. And when you see those faults, you develop a strong wish for liberation. And therefore, from the perspective of developing renunciation, the determination to live cyclic existence, the best support that you can have for that is having a human body.
아니 드레브 총슈래야 가르치는 샤레스 다들 독바로 저래도 다디 패시드니 있어레스 만주기다 아니 치디 데기 톨이야 상물단 다 시에바이나스 그 치디기 수수 치디기 데기 체슈디 아니 사이 땡기 강살이야 윤고레스 다디 아니 대원바식 소르지 아니 난준 데비 데바디 and I think devil tune that devas came mares ro dinji deva deji chembudi and koma sukdan sume giten ya deva dingores tengzi deva ta devi gil hada milishivana devi hai tengi deva di sendi deva di chegores and me tengi deva di chungores dinji chani peshi and me di chong had devi hadin jing and come hadi and chevadi peshi jago gires.
So here it says that the lesser of the ripening effect is being born as a human being. And yet we say that the best support for the development of renunciation is being born as a human being. So why is it that Lama Tsongkhapa says that the lesser ripening effect is being born as a human being? Well, Geshe reckons that Lama Tsongkhapa states it like that from the point of view of the happiness and well-being that we seek as human beings. So in general, generally speaking, not from the point of view of seeking renunciation, but from the point of view of the happiness and well-being that we seek as human beings, we often aspire for happiness and well-being. So comparing to the happiness and well-being that is experienced in being a human being, the happiness or well-being, the pleasures that gods of the desire realm experience is greater. But it's still regarded as an intermediate level of happiness and well-being because the pleasures that gods of the higher realms experience is greater than does the ones of humans or gods of the desire realm. So from that relative perspective of pleasures in those states of existence, happiness and well-being in those states of existence, that range from the small one to the great one. You know, so there's a question here in the chat. It says, in relation to the environmental effects of negative actions, while it's important to be aware of the results, wouldn't there also be the danger of labeling an experience of negative result and use it to increase self-cherishing, as opposed to saying it is happening now, but it's neither good nor bad? Dila dakpo devu tadurwa dakpo devu tadu devu de duga minda yorwa ta devu de nyondu kapsulayan pesa shas de sano mabochi tawaina sano mabochi tangwaina halam ranchin zin shukcheru drogi nyanga yores chenza pesa shas de sano matawa de devu de nyombu nyombe kapsulayan de devu de mimbares ta duga mare yaga mare samlo mamochi matan 근데 민차워레스 samloden tambay na ranchinsin shukcheru drogi marwas chesan dende samlo tana yaga marbes
Tadi nga tsobo yigiris ra tanda nganzu gi shagdam chiyondi hamala gyosam dang chimala ya domsam saydi kechenbu shu chik song yores. Inza hamal lesabi nami nyongondi gi ta lesawa shawa di ani nami nyongwala teni ta lesawa di tsawa nini ta drigmantu tida ta dukja shu resha samsamgi tsowa chik le thubay na chinchi let machi yala ya ani pengyo res ra yasi yatama pengyo ros ra.
well there's a variety of perspectives or points that you can use in order to think about it. Like for example, when you examine that from the point of view of purification practices, so when you use practices of purification, when you use the four paths of the antidote, you need to develop regret for actions that you have previously done, and then to think that henceforth in the future, I will refrain from those actions. So in order to develop that sense of regret for negative actions, you need then to consider the ripening effect of those negative actions. And you need to think to yourself that therefore there's nothing positive in them. They're not good at all. And if you're able to develop that strong sense of regret for actions that were done before, it will help you to develop a greater sense of restraint for the future.
Teni rang jinzi nyong tang tang raw di tenri rang insa mares ra ngong gi lesa bi nami susu tok to phabala teni bi ta chik dunghar thoya minde lo shukcham kyeondi ani dunghar gi tsawa di khaim ba di ngonzin che tolya ani rutu gores tara ngone nyamne ching 다 디치온디 디 자와 착당 몬소 마리 발레야테니 투여바다 공디 란친징기 또 조디 당즈 마리 바데 레도스라 다 딜야 카브데 자야야 펜토고레스 라 라만치베는 찔라칸도 검로조소 나신기 어드 스탐 담바이나 안 란친징 뇽 땅야야 텐데 펜도지야기 안 라글레야 키초그레스 라
Now, at a time of experiencing the ripening effect of a certain negative action, then rather than thinking about dwelling, for example, on the environmental result or ripening result and recognizing the result of suffering and thinking that that would then give rise to a greater sense of self-cherishing, Geshe is looking at that from a different perspective. If you actually look at the negative result, the result of suffering, and rather than use that in order to fuel the sense of self-cherishing, you can recognize that this is suffering, and suffering has a root. And you'll be looking for the root of that suffering. You will come to see that the root of suffering is grasping at a self, ignorance of grasping at a self. And therefore, you'd be able then to use this opportunity in which you do recognize the suffering that you experience as originating from ignorance, and thereby you will be more committed to eliminate the root of suffering, to eliminate self-grasping ignorance. So just like it is said in the Guru Puja, whatever I encounter, I apply it to my meditation. So in that sense, when we look at things that occur to us, suffering and so forth, which are the result, ripened result of past negative actions, then rather than just recognizing them as they are, we can recognize them. If we adopt a different perspective, we can recognize them as resultant suffering, which do have a cause. Searching for the root of this cause, self-grasping ignorance, and striving to eliminate it will also cause a reduction in our self-cherishing attitude.
데레시다 베나 지단다 야부라다 란 진진라야 지 간이 뇌투 간이 뇌투그리 가주스 뇽투그 인디톨 sometimes 지다 베마스바다 제수 여랑 내레샤스 다이나야 가야 성도 마다니 란 진진 도 세디 다디 카부 쇼지레스라 가야 성도 마다니 직차거나 되니 남주세디 기침부 쓰고에 걸으면 도스 그라 디자다디 야 sometimes gracious.
Whatever way we can use in order to undermine the attitude of self-cherishing is good. Geshe is really happy with whatever perspective we can take on reducing, harming and reducing a self-cherishing attitude. But if we just suffice with just recognizing a certain experience and not thinking about much of it, it's not going to be, it might not lead to the development of wisdom. So as such, just recognizing it, it's not that important. The most important thing is to be able to use that in order to develop wisdom. Mm. So the question is about assisting kinning. So I guess that you're asking that also with respect to the new legislation here in Queensland. I think that now it's kind of becoming legal. So if someone is suffering greatly and they want to end their life and you're assisting them, then it seems that here we have a complex situation. On one hand, you're assisting the action of taking one's life, but also in doing that, with being motivated maybe by loving kindness, compassion, care for others, and so forth. So isn't it here a mixture of both positive and negative things? Yeah. Dila tanda Australia nade kashila Mexico tanda Queensland nade layan di team savachi sudwa. Ta never kashi never not sa zada chimbochi nawaina dumya shuji nyawaina. Ani 맹간라존에 갑기압네 소소소소 쏙든 시그러와 쏙추그러와 근데 팀된된 소요래 근데디 네츠된데 조이나 맹간라 조이나 얀 member tan neo la soba dilatene kabgyagorwa. Dene chewaina member tan neo ropa chen ten so yan sochu belle den de dawda wachi sagirves. Pena mela kabgyawaina yan halam sochu belle sagin yang kayores. Ne digan la yan ninje tan jamba tan dila soba kone lanne tente dungen yongwen senje chila roba chewen na dila yang gewa chi yon sigres chesang nesa den do chila yaga tan duga chani yores tente la yorves kran samnas
다들 팀 수요나 팀이라서 아 딜레야 간즈레 게임 팀게 수요나 초스키야 말아서 아
de tim get rest and the kuran ke chamare ne de kesi chidan chena shen dungen nyombe kapsona ya
팀 수요나 디그 마르슬라나 디 팀데 카브데스로서 이난 디그리슬라나 양 show ton do dan sig yoras.
Well, to begin with, Geshe said that we are following a system of legislation. So we do abide by those rules. When certain rules are being passed, there are rules. So we cannot say that, for example, assisted killing is illegal if it is legalized in a system. Still, when you then look at that from the point of view of Buddhism, then you can say, well, in such actions, there could be also negativities involved. Even though it is permitted in the law, you cannot say that it is illegal to do it because it is no legal.
Thank you.
Let's leave it like that.
Yeah,
okay, let's leave it here. So we will finish up with the final Lamrim dedication. For my two collections, vast space that have amassed from working with effort that is practiced for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose minds' wisdom eyes blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded parts of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by my practice, using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion. May I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the paths as I've discerned them. May I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time, with my heart going out with great compassion. In whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted Bantu's peace, and may the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time by even this graded path to enlightenment, completed due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons. May all humans and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and create conducive conditions for practicing the excellent paths never be parted in any of their lives from the purest paths praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtues practices, may it always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Thank you.